Hello Internet, welcome back to Tromsø Twilight, the channel where I, Vincent, talk to you, those who may wish to listen, about books, movies, music I enjoy, find interesting, or a combination of the two. I'm here to talk about disturbing songs. I've been saying, for those who watch regularly, that I'm going to do this for over a week, and I've been a little delayed due to health reasons, but I'm here now. I'm going to do the list. I'm doing 10 songs that for different reasons might be disturbing, unsettling, in some ways upsetting. But before I get into it, I'm just going to give a little introduction about what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about disturbing music. Now, I asked a couple of people close to me, have you got a song that you find disturbing? I'm trying to put together a list of disturbing songs. And one person said Last Christmas by Wham, and another person said Barbie Girl by Aqua. And I was like, why are you choosing those? And they said, I don't know. I find it unlistenable. It makes me feel really bad. I can't stand it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about songs that you think are like stylistically, taste wise, or in their expression, just so kind of tasteless and disgusting that you don't ever want to hear it. That's a whole different discussion. That's a whole different list. I'm thinking about things here that are intentionally unsettling or taboo or disturbing. They want to have that effect on you to some degree or in some fashion. And if you like this video, do let me know. Click like or comment that you enjoyed it, because if people are interested, I actually had to shorten my list. I wanted to do 10 and I had at least 15, so I can do an extra video on in some extra songs. And what I've done here is I've picked out things that I think are interesting in different ways so that the list doesn't get too repetitive. I'm not going to give like trigger warnings or warnings throughout the video, but I will say that the list is roughly structured so that the songs that I would hesitate to recommend to people because they are so disturbing that I would actually feel bad if someone was really upset by it. I would understand, if you felt that you wish you had never heard it. Those are only really the last couple of songs. The stuff before that, I think, could be most interesting for a wider group of people. But be aware that, like trigger warning, everything. These songs are intentionally disturbing. If you're upset by this video, I would really understand it. And if you know that you're a sensitive person who wants to avoid things that might make you feel bad or feel unsettled or directly disturbed and horrified, not all my videos are like this. So go find something else that is going to make you have a good day. I don't want to be ruining your day. So with all that said, if you are interested, let's do the list. And I've made it into a playlist, so it's in the description of this video if you would like to listen to the songs on YouTube so that you know what I'm talking about, or you want to listen to it after the discussion. The first one is The Intruder by Peter Gabriel. Now this one is one of the less disturbing songs, I think. It's closer to a kind of creepy, strange song, but if you think about what he's saying and the character that he's playing, it really is quite frightening. It's off of this album, which is the third Peter Gabriel solo album, which even the front cover of this record is quite disturbing. When I was a kid and I saw it in the record shop, I didn't want to listen to it because I found it quite horrifying. The album cover was actually made by melting a Polaroid photograph with a lighter. So it's made very hands-on, and when you know that, I think it's kind of cool. It's like, this is 1980s, before Photoshop, it's before AI. You had to do this stuff physically, and I think they got a really interesting effect, actually. Musically, the song is really interesting. It's based around a drum pattern, a looped drum pattern, played live by the drummer Phil Collins, originally from Genesis. And the sound of the drums is processed in such a way that each drum hit sounds massive, but it doesn't ring for a long time. They're very short. And this drum sound became very defining for the 1980s. It's most famously used on In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, but this was one of the first times it had ever been used. So you have these massive drums playing in a circle with no cymbals, and then the instrumentation of the song is also quite unsettling. There's kind of scratchy noises on the guitar, weird synthesizers, backing vocals that are processed in quite a strange way. And where Peter Gabriel is coming in the bar each time, like where he starts singing, it sounds like it's the wrong place, like it's not where you would intuitively expect him to start singing. So he seems a bit early every time. I think that's deliberate because the character he's playing, the intruder, is somebody who likes to break into houses and look around and look through your things. So he's talking about, I know something about opening windows and doors. I know how to walk across creaky wooden floors. So he can get into your house without you hearing him. And he's kind of a creep. He likes smelling someone's dresses or touching the dresses that the person wears that he's addressing. He's cutting the telephone wire, and he has lines like, "Intruder's happy in the dark. Intruder come and he leave his mark." So he's maybe leaving something behind him to let you know that he's been there, but you don't see him perhaps. And he talks about in the song how he enjoys the fact that the other person is frightened. He likes the thought of them lying awake at night, listening, being scared. So he's like the character or the figure that everybody is frightened of when they imagine maybe somebody's in the house at night. He's playing that character. Or maybe he's playing some kind of stalker, some kind of obsessive. It's a very deliberately creepy, unsettling voice that he's inhabiting. What's more, the song kind of ends with him whistling a melody a couple of times, and it's almost like, I think of him as being like a sort of film noir villain. Like you hear him whistling as he's coming, he's enjoying frightening you. There's a live version of this on YouTube that I'll also link in the description, where he's kind of performing the character, and even though it's in a big live space like a kind of rock concert scenario, it's still quite an unsettling piece of theatre in my opinion. And the song is also slightly faster, so it's kind of cool to hear that version of the song. This is the first song on the list, song number 10, The Intruder. Okay, so song number 9, the second song, is both newer and older than the Peter Gabriel track. It's newer because the version that I'm sharing with you is from 2023 by a band called Lankum, who are an Irish folk group, and the song is called Go Dig My Grave. It's an older song because it's actually a traditional, based on music from Barbados and also I think old Appalachian folk music. The writer who's credited with the song is Jean Ruth Ritchie, who was a folk songer from the Appalachians. The version that Lankum do is very influenced by Irish folk singing, which also has this style of singing called keening, which is to express kind of woe or grief. And it tells a story that shifts in perspective. First, it begins with the narrator saying, "Go dig my grave," and describing the grave that they want to lie in and saying that they want everybody to know that they died for love. And then it tells the stories of two parents whose daughter comes home one day and explains that the butcher boy who has wooed her and seduced her and courted her no longer wants to see her. And she goes upstairs, and when the father comes up to give her some hope, he finds her hanging from a rope. And in Lankum's version, this song is sung in a very kind of serious, direct, sad fashion for the first half, and then the second half is this kind of looping, repetitive instrumental that starts to sound perhaps like a funeral march. It has a sort of doomy, repetitive, droning aspect to it that continually goes on and builds up a very dark atmosphere. While The Intruder by Peter Gabriel was creepy and disturbing in something of a playful fashion, Go Dig My Grave is no kind of joke, it's no kind of game. It's an extremely serious and quite horrifying song about a young person ending their life in their family home. If we say we're counting down from 10 to 1, then the next song is number 8, and it is ANOHNI, formerly Anthony and the Johnsons, 4 Degrees. This song is from a whole album of kind of protest songs, political songs, and it is a song about climate change. It's a kind of protest song about climate change, but it's the most disturbing expression of this theme I've ever heard. It has, like the Intruder, very kind of banging drums, so it has this kind of quite immediate musical sound. But then all of the rest of the instrumentation is kind of like sort of blown out and distorted. It's sort of beautiful, but it also sounds like it's burning. And then ANOHNI is singing over the top of this, and they are singing that they want to see the world burn, and they are describing all the things that they want to see. They want to see the tiny lemurs and creatures gasping for breath. They want to see the big mammals dying in the sun. And I want to burn the air, I want to burn the breeze. And the chorus, the refrain is, it's only 4 degrees, it's only 4 degrees. Kind of saying, we just need to push it a bit further and we're going to get there. So they are describing the kind of complete environmental collapse of the earth, and then reminding you that we're very close. It's only 4 degrees. We need to raise the core level of the earth temperature with 4 degrees and we'll have total ecological disaster. The song, instead of kind of pointing a finger or wagging a finger or trying to kind of sound a warning, it's doing the opposite. It's using this kind of bitter, melancholy irony of trying to inhabit, the perspective of whoever it is in corporate capitalism who seems to be deliberately bringing about the end of the world, the end of biodiversity. And it almost sounds like it's going to end at one point, and they are singing, I want to burn them, I want to burn them. And then it comes back, and they're singing, let's go, it's only 4 degrees, like really like willing it to happen. I think this song is such an effective piece of kind of political songwriting because it's embodying the most horrific position you could possibly take on the issue at hand and confronting the listener with it in a way that almost sounds kind of triumphant but is shot through with real fear and sadness. The next song is the most recent one on my list, and it is from an album that I talked about recently on a video, which is JPEGMAFIA's album Experimental Rap. This album has not been very well received, and I think that it's been generally quite misunderstood. Like the way that I understand JPEGMAFIA is that he's quite a political artist, and a lot of the things that people take offense at in his music, like a certain sort of very braggadocious, misogynistic way of talking, I've always thought is him kind of embodying a negative stereotype about the American black man, and kind of using it as something that makes the listener uncomfortable. Like he's deliberately using it almost as a tactic. And there's one song on this album that I think really kind of demonstrates him doing this, but where he takes it to an extent that I think is quite disturbing, in a real smart way. But it's a song that I kind of really love, but it really got under my skin and I keep listening to it. There's something horrifying about it, but it's also brilliant. And this is a song called Chat. Now, at the start of the song, JPEGMAFIA is singing, chat, chat, chat. Point me to the house. I'm up in this bitch right now. Free Rodney Hinton Jr. Stop letting them kill my childs. So what he's saying in this, Free Rodney Hinton Jr., he's a person who killed an American sheriff with his car. He's saying, free him, stop letting them kill my childs. He's essentially saying that we need people who kill police to be free so they can kill more police, so that the police stop killing young black people. And he then says, free Mikey or free Lily, depending on the repetition in the song, and then, which I guess is somebody that he knows personally. And then he says, free D Chauvin, so we can put that bitch in the ground. So he's saying both, free these people who he wants to be freed from prison because they're in prison for killing police. And then he says, free Derek Chauvin, who is the person who killed George Floyd, so that he can be murdered also. So essentially, he's expressing a frustration with white supremacy in America to such an extent that he's arguing that the only viable solution is to go completely outside any sort of system and enact vigilante justice. And what I think is fascinating about this song, if you listen to it, is it has this very kind of spooky, repetitive synth rhythm. And JPEGMAFIA's character is this kind of figure who's driving around in the town that he lives in, kind of killing police and enacting vengeance, essentially. He's some kind of ghost. He talks about having ghost guns that make no sound. He says, they're killing our kids with pop guns. I'm riding around town with a shotgun. Talks about being the ghost of OJ and Johnny Cochran. And OJ being somebody who killed a white person and got away with it because Johnny Cochran, his lawyer, got him off. And many people saw that as a kind of retribution after the LA riots and the death of Rodney King. So throughout the whole song, he's kind of expressing this fantasy of a kind of like ghostly political vengeance. And he's also mixing this together with like the normal kind of like braggadocious attacks on other rappers. But at the same time, it's not clear whether he's actually talking about other rappers or whether he's kind of mixing it together with a critique of the American political system. I told my Russian bitch Donald is puppeting. So it's like, is he actually talking about having a Russian girlfriend, or is he talking about Donald Trump is a Russian agent? And that because shortly after he also says, never missing my target like Thomas did, Thomas being the first name of the person who tried to assassinate Trump. So all through the song, he's dropping these lines in about political violence. Later on, he talks about shooting at the police who, you know, are in blue, talking about change their hue. He says, all of this ice on my neck, they're going to try and remove. And like this ice on my neck, in hip hop, normally ice is diamonds. So he's talking about that people on the street would try to remove his jewelry, try to mug him. But all of this ice on my neck, they can try and remove, is also a reference to ICE, the American Immigration Service, who are abducting people from the streets. So he's continually flipping back and forth between these two idioms in a really interesting way. And you might be saying, yeah, Vincent, this is all really interesting, but it hasn't, I still don't think it's disturbing. Like, it's not really that disturbing. I would say it is because I think it's describing this completely dystopian situation of race relations in America. And he's talking about basically a civil war that he sees as already having begun, and they need more recruits. They need to, you know, free people from prison to get an army together, essentially. But also the thing that kind of clicked for me that really made this song horrifying was at the end when it goes back to the refrain and it's chat, point me to the house, I'm up in this bitch right now. I was like, why is he saying chat? And then it occurred to me it's because this figure, this kind of weird like ghost vendetta vigilante figure in the song is live streaming the whole thing. So it's like live streaming assassination. And then I was thinking about, he's saying that because so many white supremacist spree killers and shooters live stream their like racist assassination attempts, and he's fantasizing about doing the same thing as like revenge. Okay, track 6 is by one of my all-time favorite artists, Lingua Ignota. It's from this album, Caligula, but honestly I had real trouble with this one because you could choose about 50% of Lingua Ignota's musical output as an example of disturbing music. I nearly took a song called The Disease of Men, which is the first track on her first ever release. But in the end, I decided that a kind of good intro to her, if you don't know her, and a good expression of why her music is both disturbing and fascinating, is a song from this album called May Failure Be Your Noose. What Lingua Ignota did as a project is kind of mix together religious imagery and language, the language of domestic abuse and misogyny, and the language of those who have been subjected to abuse and want retribution. And it's difficult often to tell which voice is speaking at any given time. And this song is a really great example of that. It starts with this very kind of beautiful classical piano line, and she's singing over the top of it the type of threats, essentially, that an abuser might use for a person to prevent them from leaving. Who will love you if I don't? who will fuck you if I won't. But then as I've listened more to her music and understood the project, I've realised that even those lines are ambiguous, because people who are in a kind of Stockholm syndrome situation, who kind of empathise with the person subjecting them to abuse, will often feel bad for that person. You know, if I leave you, who will love you if I won't? You're such a difficult, troubled person. Who will look after you if I don't? But then it switches as well to a kind of prayer or a kind of wish. May failure be a belt with which to gird you, for example. And at first, these wishes are almost like, I wish that failure will be something that supports you, or that protects you. So it's a kind of ambiguous prayer. But then she sings the title of the song, May failure be a noose with which to hang you. So she's really kind of not just wishing for the demise of this person, but she's wishing for their total failure. And like many songs on the project, this song moves into another kind of sequence, another section, where she's singing everything burns down around me, everything burns down. And this kind of builds up and gets more and more noisy and more heavy, and it becomes this kind of expression of complete despair, I guess. Everything burns down around me. But can it also be liberating, you know, this kind of situation of an abusive dynamic and abusive relationship that you're stuck in? Everything burns down. There's something potentially freeing and phoenix-like. And this is what's always fascinating about her music, is that it's constantly confronting you with extremely disturbing material, and always with some degree of ambiguity, some degree of reading, so you never feel totally trapped. Also, this one, it's not as sonically aggressive and abrasive as some of her music, but it has some of those elements. There's some aspects of kind of screamed vocals in the background and things. So I took it as a kind of entry to give you an impression, if you haven't heard Lingua Ignota before, of the kinds of different musical expressions that she uses to create this universe of like extreme music, experimental music, difficult avant-garde sounds, and also quite skilled and well-trained classical piano playing and singing. We're now halfway through the list, and the next 5 songs are going to become progressively more disturbing, in my opinion. The next one, song 5, is called Killing for Company, and it is from this album, The Great Annihilator by Swans, which is an album that came out in 1995, and in my opinion is probably the best entry point for the band Swans if you want to get interested in them, and also for me, one of their 2 best records. Killing for Company doesn't immediately sound like a disturbing song. It's spacey, it's slow, but it's kind of beautiful. It sounds almost like epic, cosmic, perhaps even. And Michael Gerard, the main vocalist of the band, is singing in this low but quite pretty baritone. And he's singing, I couldn't stop myself, I knew I'd do it again, but I could heal myself if I could feel your skin. And if I comprehend this moment, I know we'll live again. And if I can heal your wound, we will make love again. It's a bit abstract, but it seems kind of like a song of love or connection, and it wouldn't be horrifying if you didn't know that it was based on this book, Killing for Company by Brian Masters, which is a biography of the serial killer Dennis Nilsen, who was an English person, worked in the civil service. He was a trade unionist, but secretly he would drug and drown young men, who he would then keep in his flat in northwest London, where he would place them around in the living room, watch television together. He would put makeup on them, dismember them, and a whole variety of very strange behaviours and horrific behaviours. Typically, I'm not interested in true crime or serial killers, but because of this song, I read the book, and it's actually an extremely interesting book and well written. Masters corresponded with Nilsen while he was in prison, and you really get some kind of sense of who this guy is, and he goes back into some of his childhood experiences to try to understand why he was interested in, for example, drowned men. Now, again, there are many songs about serial killers, and it can be a bit cheap. It can be a kind of tacky theme. It was something that people were very interested in by the 90s, and also already in the 80s from punk culture and zine culture. But what I think makes Killing for Company a particularly disturbing song is the fact that it's so tender, and it's sung to the person that the narrator has killed, but it never really describes anything violent or horrific. Rather, he's saying things like, we're slipping through this millennium. We should feel sorry for the people. And can I kiss your skin? So it's like he's talking about, feeling bad for the people of the world, and about time and the movement of the 20th century. So it's like the conversation he's having with the person who's dead, where he is sort of projecting a consciousness onto them. I think a couple of the most sort of disturbing lines in the song for me is that he says, there's hunger in the desert and there are missiles in the sky. Every soul is interwoven before the wrong or the right. It's like, he's thinking about the state of the world, maybe the horrors that he's seeing on the news while he's sitting with this person that he's killed. And Killing for Company, the title of Brian Master's book is because Nilsson killed people to keep himself company, because he was a lonely, kind of isolated and strange individual. But in the song, he sings, I'll keep you company, I'll keep you company, as if he's keeping this person that he's murdered company. And you, as the listener, are asked to kind of take on the perspective of the character that Nilsson is taking care of. So the next song, number 4, it's from The Holy Bible by the Manic Street Preachers, which is an album that I've been asked to talk about a couple of times, so I may do a video about it in full at some point. But the Manic Street Preachers, they're a Welsh rock band, and in '94 they put out this album, The Holy Bible, which has actually many songs on it that are quite disturbing. But to me, perhaps the most disturbing song is a song called 4 Stone 7 Pounds. And 4 stone 7 pounds is supposed to be the weight at which a person with an eating disorder reaches a kind of point of no return where they will die. Richie Edwards, the lyricist for the group, he did suffer from anorexia, and he writes this song from the perspective of a teenage girl who suffers from this condition. Musically, it's a rock song. It has it sounds a little bit like the band The Jam at the beginning. The riff is sort of like Eaton Rifles. It has some quite kind of high, kind of tinny, scratching guitars. It's sung in a very kind of almost like a hard rock, but like a high-pitched male vocal. The band has a lot of chemistry. It's very like intense, but it's not kind of like, it doesn't have this sort of swaggering confidence that you associate with a lot of hard rock music. Like the soundscape of the song kind of expresses this sort of dark, claustrophobic desperation of the theme. And the lyrics of the song kind of, they're horrifying, but they also express something of this person's sort of tendency to romanticize what it is she is doing. So she sings, or the character in the refrain sings, I want to walk in the snow and not leave a footprint, which I think is this really kind of beautiful, horrifying expression of the desire to disappear and starving oneself to achieve that goal. It also expresses something that I think people shy away from, which is the narrator's disgust and kind of like patronizing perspective on the people who are trying to take care of her. He says, just look at the fat scum who pamper me. And by the end of the song, the narrator is kind of achieving their goal of starving themselves past the point of no return. I think this song is genuinely brilliant because it kind of walks the line where it acknowledges the sort of strange, bleak, seductive draw that this type of attitude to the body might have, this kind of desire for self-obliteration and control. The narrator calls it discipline, rare discipline, at the same time as it starkly describes the horror, and there's something terrifying about it also. Okay, so that's that song, and now we're moving on to song number 3. We're in the top 3 of the list. If you were wondering, will Eminem show up? Like Stan is quite a disturbing song. Eminem talks about a lot of taboo material. The answer is kind of, almost, not really. The third from top song that I chose for this list is 97 Bonnie and Clyde by Tori Amos. In 2001, Tori Amos made an album called Strange Little Girls, which was all songs written by men about women. And a couple of them are truly inspired interpretations. But the most disturbing one is 97 Bonnie and Clyde, which was on the first Eminem album. And if you don't know the original song, it is Eminem kind of in character as Slim Shady, talking about killing his real life girlfriend, Kim, and making his real life daughter, Haley, an accomplice to the murder, or at least the disposal of her body. And it's done in this kind of horrorcore fashion where it's supposed to be shocking and horrifying, but it's also kind of supposed to be funny. And the way that he uses the rhymes is almost funny if you don't think too carefully about what the concept of the song is. Like he says, there's a place called heaven and a place called hell. There's a place called prison and a place called jail. And Daddy's probably going to all 3 of those except one, because Mummy's got a new husband and a stepson. Like, it's kind of witty, it's kind of smart, and he kind of gets away with it to a certain extent because of the presentation of the song. And Tori Amos, I think, must have heard that and said, no, let's strip it back to what it actually is. So the music on her version is very kind of subtle. It has these synthesized strings, and it has just the drum beat is almost like the drum machine that you have in a Wurlitzer organ. And she's reciting Marshall Mathers lyrics in a sort of very quiet southern drawl. And when it sounds like she's talking to a child, it really actually does sound like she's talking to a child. Everything is very soft, it's very gentle. I saw an interview some years ago with Tori Amos talking about this song, where she said that when she heard it, it was like the woman in the song who was dead in the trunk of the car reached out her hand and took Tori Amos by the hand and said, you need to tell my story. In Eminem's version of the song, he interpolates Just the Two of Us by Bill Withers, but he's doing that because Will Smith did a version of Just the Two of Us, which was about him and his son. And he's kind of mocking that by doing his version of the song, but in his version, he's killed the mother of the child. And Tori Amos sings these same lyrics, Just the Two of Us, but in a different melody, and it's so haunting. And the same thing as well when she's saying me and my daughter, and she's describing hearing her murderer make her daughter the accomplice. I think this is probably one of the best covers ever done, because it is in many ways true to the concept of the song, but it's truer than the original. Okay, number 2, Mary Turner by Shoo Shoo. This is from their album Girl with a Basket of Fruit. This is sonically the most horrific song on the list. It is a kind of nightmarish collage of sound with a sort of, there's a really quite beautiful, haunting, but distorted cello part in the middle, processed voices. There it is a very kind of insistent or like banging drum machine at one point, but it's not a very rhythmic piece of music. And it is the story of Mary Turner, who was murdered by a lynch mob in 1918. Her husband was killed the day before, and she expressed publicly that this was a crime, and that she intended to seek legal representation. And as a result, she was murdered the next day by a mob of white people. She was pregnant, and her child was killed. And Juju's song describes this series of events in very vivid detail. Before I made this video, I'd actually only listened to this song about 3 times because it's so disturbing. But I remembered it basically word for word because it is so striking. It's written in this very visceral way. But it's also very interesting in terms of like the tradition of the murder ballad, because these are folk songs written about real murders, and they often repeat names, you know, like the name of the person who was killed or the name of the killer. And Mary Turner, even the title is a repetition of her name, and all through the song, Jamie Stewart keeps starting each section with Mary Turner, and then he describes what happens. Oh, sorry, I'm saying he. I forget that Jamie Stewart came out as non-binary. I mean no disrespect. I'll try to say they. I don't want to have to re-record the whole of this. So they have this quite sort of strange vibrato voice often anyway, but the way they are emoting and expressing throughout this recording is really something else. It's sort of a litany of horrors and musically disturbing, and at a certain point you can almost ask why even make this song, like, apart from the fact that you are aware of this horrendous event, and you need to kind of channel it into something creative. Why put it out into the world for people to hear it? And the song answers that question so extremely well. The song is an account of a racial murder carried out by a mob at a time, unfortunately, when this wasn't even particularly unusual, when there was no recourse for the people in question, as the song describes. Just calling it a crime put your life at risk. And Jamie Stewart is very aware that this tradition is also the origin of the kind of far-right sentiment in America today, you know, white supremacy, this thing about deportations, MAGA, the whole thing. And so they are refusing to let that truth disappear. They're shoving it forward in quite an ugly, horrifying fashion. And they end the song very close to the microphone with a totally different voice to all of the rest of the story, and very clearly just say, fuck your guns, fuck your war, fuck your truck, fuck your flag. Okay, the last one, number 1 on the list. It could have been, the top 2 could have been in any order, to be honest, but I think maybe this song is the most disturbing song I've ever heard, which I still consider to be good, to be artistic. And this is a song called Song for Billy by Ursula Rucker. Ursula Rucker is a really great spoken word poet. She worked with a sort of jazz drum and bass band called Four Hero back in the day. She's done some solo albums. She's not very well known, unfortunately. If you think this is all interesting but you don't want to listen to this last song because it sounds too awful, listen to another song by her that is called, wait a minute, just let me look it up. Yeah, it's called The Pliable Ones. Listen to that. It's such a beautiful evocation of how the environment and the world affects us and our mood and our spirit. Really, really an incredible piece of writing. But this song, Song for Billy, is the last song on her debut album, Super Sister, which came out around 2000, 2001, I believe. The song is a story about a baby who is born to a mother who is addicted to crack cocaine. And the baby becomes the mother's way of paying for her drugs. So she gives the baby to some men who abuse the baby in return for drugs. And this situation is so appalling and so taboo that it's something that we never talk about. But I work as a psychotherapist and I work a lot with trauma. And unfortunately, situations like this are less uncommon than you would think. What makes this song so extremely disturbing is Rucker has a beautiful speaking voice. She's an incredibly good writer, and she tells this story in a very matter-of-fact way, at the same time as she blends together a kind of mixture of religious imagery, total obscenity, social critique, and like horror. So she describes the people who are doing this partly as like worshippers, and she describes it as a ritual, but she also describes it as a crime. She describes kind of, or implies, what happens to the baby. She talks about the mother being drugged up while the baby is fucked up. She describes the men as pigs, and she talks about the child as a sacrificial lamb, but also as pig feed. It's awful at the same time as it's almost beautiful, because you can tell that it's written from a place of like a mixture of horror and compassion. There's not that much more to say about it really, apart from it's totally unique. It is also musically quite soothing. It's almost like a relaxing piece of music. So having this quite quiet, gentle spoken word story telling you about something more horrifying than you can really imagine is an extremely unique, strange, and appalling experience. And I feel like a song like this and like Mary Turner, they're disturbing, but they're also politically important. Like, art is supposed to confront you with the aspects of the world that people would rather dissociate or forget. And somebody like Ursula Rucker refuses to allow that to happen. The way she uses rhythm is really interesting, and kind of, it's almost like you're hoping that the next line won't be as disturbing as the one that you just heard, and then she'll kind of float back and forth between imagery. She's playing with rhythm, almost like a in a spoken word rap almost type of way. And there's something like shocking about hearing someone create rhymes out of the material that she's presenting. I will finally say that this is like one of the few times I've shared this song with anybody, because when I first heard the album Super Sister and I heard this song, and I was totally kind of shocked and appalled and impressed by it. I played it to a few people. It was back when I was at university, and basically everyone I played it to was like, switch it off. Like, why did you play that to me? What the fuck is wrong with you? So check it out if you're interested. You'll be one of the few people who actually took the recommendation. We're at the end of this list of 10 disturbing songs. I would be super interested to hear what you think about it, if any of it was interesting to you. If so, which of these songs kind of caught your attention? Maybe there's something here you haven't heard of before. And please, if you have any songs that you personally have found disturbing, they don't need to be as intense as some of the material here, just things that have kind of been very thought-provoking or shocking or impressive or unsettling for you. Please let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading your comments. And like I said at the beginning, if you want 5 more, I have 5 more. Thanks for listening for all of this time. Enjoy the playlist if that's your thing, and hope to see you again soon.